The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Caught on tape and caught saying more things he might regret. After saying we really don't have a spending problem, the president admitting this.
My goal is not to chase a balanced budget just for the sake of balance.
Wait a minute, that reminded us of this.
Today I'm pledging to cut the deficit we inherited by half by the end of my first term in office.
Why, I oughta. Maybe he meant the debt would go up by 50% because that's what happened. And remember these health care promises.
We will keep this promise. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor. You can keep your doctor. If you like your doctor or health care plan, then keep it. If you've got a doctor that you like, you will be able to keep your doctor.
Yeah, but anyway, we all know how all this turned out. Pat has had it with all of that. I'm talking about legendary singer and actor Pat Boone. He's fed up, but, you know, Pat, to your credit, a lot of this stuff you were warning about and the mixed messages not only he was sending, but Democrats in general were sending on how serious they were about any and all of these issues. And now we're in some deep issues here. What happens?
You're talking to me, Neil?
I am, Patrick,
Thanks. Good to be with you always. I like Fox Business News, by the way. I think everybody ought to have it.
There you go.
If you want a spokesman, I'm your guy.
and a great singing voice besides. We're going to set it to tune.
I'll sing it for you, yeah. I find that the media, most of the media, is completely oblivious, and for that matter, a lot of people in Congress, they don't know why Mr. Obama is doing these things and saying these things and contradicting himself, and even, as Bob Woodward pointed out, lying about them, about the sequester that was his idea. He is following his playbook, which is Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. This is the guy that trained him to be a community organizer, a Marxist, a socialist, a progressive, who wrote the rules for doing what Mr. Obama is doing now as president.
Here you and I can have a slightly different point of view. I will assign many motives to him. Not being the sharpest economic tool in the shed is probably the worst, I could say, and you're free to have your own opinions on some of that other stuff. But I will say this.
Yeah.
Do you think that he has really tipped his hand, that whether his goal is not a balanced budget, whether, as he said off the cup to John Boehner, we don't have a spending problem, whether we're hearing the likes of Nancy Pelosi don't even touch adjusting the age of Medicare, or Harry Reid saying we're not going to put entitlements on the table right now, that there is a pattern of behavior and remarks that seems to clearly put a limit on how much they're going to tolerate in spending cuts, which means no spending cuts?
Well, the sequester, which he denied was his idea, but Bob Woodward called him on that, and they finally had to admit, yeah, I did propose it, but as a deadline, I didn't think it would ever come into being, he said. But if it did not, if the Congress capitulated, the Republicans, and came up with plans for me to spend a couple trillion more, according to my plan for the country, then there wouldn't be a sequester. But if it does, then I will have executive privilege of deciding where the cuts will be. And of course, he's cutting where they hurt the most by design.
But you know, the media let him do that. The media didn't look into this. And a lot of your buddies, I know you stand out like a sore thumb in your entertainment industry, didn't call him on it. And even though a lot of them knew it. I talked to many who approached you off the record. You know, Neil, you're right. I mean, he is pulling a couple of fast ones here. I said, why don't you go on the air and say that? I said, well, I really can't. Why is that?
There is an intimidation factor and a ridicule factor. And listen, have you read this book, Saul Alinsky's Rules for?
Yes, I have. I have indeed. I know, but I just don't want to go down this alley because I know you feel strongly. Yes, but I will say this: you don't even need to assign those motives to him to assign some very big question marks to his economic stewardship.
But there has to be some kind of reasoning for why he does what he does, which
he's not too bright economically. I think he's a smart guy. This is a weak area. I do. Just like I'm not very good on any. You were to ask me a lot of medical questions. I'm not great. But I think this is, and what's odd and ironic about that is he's having the most effect on economic issues about which he knows very, very little.
True, but I think he's a brilliant guy, and I think he knows what he's doing, and he's doing it by design, because he has a plan which he thinks is good for America, a virtually socialist nation in which people don't get very rich, everybody has everything, the government is in charge of everything because the government can do everything
No, he's just
better.
targeting you, Pat. That's the dirty little secret. He's just going after
Well,
you.
I am a target. I was on his enemies list in the first year of his presidency.
Well, don't worry, because after this segment, you're right back on it. Pat, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Hang in there. Thank you. You look great. Stay great.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.